We have breaking news in the SEC that could have an impact on the West Virginia Mountaineers. Welcome into this live episode of Couz's Corner here, surprise live episode here on this Thursday afternoon. Thank you for joining the show. Per Ross Dellinger, the SEC has decided to go to a 9-game conference schedule. That's right. Here's the announcement over on Ross Dellinger's Twitter page. It says SEC to implement 9-game conference football schedule in 2026. 9 SEC games plus an annual power opponent creates the strongest and most competitive schedule in college football. The Southeastern Conference today announced it will implement a 9-game football schedule beginning in 2026, reinforcing the SEC's position as the nation's leader in competitive excellence and fan excitement. The decision, approved by the SEC's presidents and chancellors following a recommendation by the league's athletics directors, was announced by Commissioner Greg Sankey. The SEC will continue with a single standings non-divisional structure. Each school will play 3 annual opponents focused on maintaining many traditional rivalries. Each team's remaining 6 games will rotate among the remaining conference schools, and each team will face every other SEC program at least once every 2 years and every opponent home and away in 4 years. SEC teams are required to schedule at least one additional high-quality non-conference from the Atlantic Coast, Big Ten or Big 12 conferences, or Notre Dame each season. The SEC will continue to evaluate its policies to ensure the continued scheduling of high-quality non-conference opponents. So this is breaking news. A lot of us have expected this to happen at some point. We did not see it happening this soon. At least I didn't. Did not expect it to happen this quickly. We knew it had been talked about along with some of the playoff expansion talk, but the decision has now been made beginning next year, next season. They will go to 9 conference games beginning in 2026. Thank you all for joining this live show, whether you're watching on Facebook, whether you're watching on Twitter, whether you're watching on YouTube, obviously. Either way, please hit the like button. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, please come over to the YouTube channel once this is all done. Check out the shows we've done over there if you have yet to do so, and be sure to subscribe. We're on our way to 10K. Now, a lot of you might be asking, Couz, what does this have to do with West Virginia? Well, if you're a West Virginia fan, you already know the answer to that question more than likely. West Virginia has Alabama on their non-conference schedule in 2026 and 2027. And there's a lot, we've heard West Virginia talk about, at least when Neil Brown was the coach, we've heard West Virginia talk about trying to get that game off their schedule potentially. Neil Brown talked about it openly. We've heard Ren Baker mention it openly. Again, not sure what Rich Rod's opinion of it is, but we do know that's how Ren Baker felt, at least that's how Neil Brown felt. But for West Virginia to get out of that game, it would have meant them having to pay Alabama about $2 million, right? Well, maybe now, does that mean Alabama decides to cancel the series? And does that mean Alabama pays West Virginia a couple $1 million to get out of this series? And I know what you're thinking, but Couz, they say they're still going to play a non-conference Power 4 opponent. That's right. But let's take a look. Let's talk about what Alabama's schedule looks like in the next couple years. Let's look at 2026 when they're supposed to play West Virginia in Morgantown. They also are scheduled to play Florida State in 2027. Or I'm sorry, 2026. They're supposed to play West Virginia and Florida State in the non-conference, plus a group of 5 and/or FCS opponent. Now, if you're a TV network, would you rather see Alabama play West Virginia or Florida State? Who's going to get the most viewers? I'm a West Virginia fan, but I'm not naive to that, and I know it's going to be Florida State. So I expect Alabama will likely be pressured to keep their series or their game against Florida State in 2026. But what about 2027? Well, let's take a look at 2027. Who does Alabama play in 2027? West Virginia and Ohio State. That definitely is going to get better viewership than West Virginia, Alabama. Right? That definitely is going to get more viewership. So who do you think the league and potentially even the networks are going to pressure Alabama to play in 2027? Ohio State or West Virginia? You guessed it, probably Ohio State. And now this is not really relevant to this particular topic, but it is relevant to the SEC's decision today. West Virginia also has Tennessee on the schedule for 2028 in a neutral site game in Charlotte, North Carolina. But that so far is Tennessee's only non-conference game they have scheduled for 2028. So it's possible that game will remain on the schedule. But we'll see how that pans out. Now, how does this tie in to playing Marshall or to the Friends of Cold Bowl potentially returning to Morgantown? Well, let's talk about that. I'm going to go ahead and share a tweet that came out from Tony Gibson, and this started a lot of speculation on social media. But there was a tweet put out on X, or a post on X, I should say, from Marshall Football. Marshall Football's own X account says, "Oh, what a show it was. 25 days until we're back in the Joan. Can't wait to run it back as the only undefeated team at home in the state last year. We are Marshall." Now, that is obviously a jab at West Virginia, saying they're the only undefeated team at home in the state because West Virginia lost some games in Morgantown, right? Well, what's interesting about that post, if you look above it, it was reposted by Tony Gibson, the coach at Marshall. And all he posted was 2027 with the magnifying glass emoji. That had West Virginia fans and Marshall fans wondering, what in the world? Is that a troll job? Is that a hint that West Virginia and Marshall are going to play in 2027? Well, according to some, and I haven't had a chance, haven't looked this one up yet because I was in a hurry to do this show. Marshall has an opening on their schedule for 2027. Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and pull it up to see if that's actually true. Marshall future football schedules 2027. I guess they do because they play 4 non-conference games every year, and right now they only have 3 scheduled: Ohio, Boise State, and Bowling Green. So they have no P4s on their schedule for 2027. West Virginia could fill that role, but there are some challenges to making that happen. If West Virginia takes Bama off their schedule in 2027, that would leave them with 0 Power 4 opponents in the non-conference. I'm not sure West Virginia would want to do that. Right now, they have Alabama to go along with an FCS and a group of 5 opponent. So would West Virginia really want to play Marshall, play 2 G5s and an FCS and no Power 4s? Not sure. Also, the other challenge there, it would only be a 1-game deal because there are no other years where West Virginia has an opening on their schedule, at least not to this point. And I don't see Marshall agreeing to come to Morgantown. Maybe they would for a 1 game. And I also don't see West Virginia agreeing to go to Huntington to play 1 game. So it would likely have to be at a neutral site. Where would they play? That would be another challenge to making this happen. Now, that is why, but this tweet by Tony Gibson really has fans wondering what the heck could he mean, because Marshall made a jab at West Virginia, and then he retweets it with that eyeglass emoji, and I'm sure he and Rich Rod talk. They're friends. They hang out together. They've been seen at concerts together. If there's any time this series gets renewed, it would be now with these 2 gentlemen as the head coach of those teams. So it's going to be interesting to see, A, does Alabama drop West Virginia off the schedule? And B, if they do, what happens? Does West Virginia not play a Power 4 team in 2027 and instead play Marshall? Or do they try to get a Power 4 opponent on the schedule for 2027 to replace Marshall? And what about 2026? If they lose Bama, they still have UVA on the schedule for 2026 in a neutral site game in Charlotte. So they would still have a quality game on their schedule. They would still have to fill a slot in 2026, the Mountaineers would, but it would not have to be with a Power 4 opponent necessarily. They could fill it with a G5 or an FCS. Now, unfortunately, Marshall doesn't have an opening in 2026, so that wouldn't really work there unless Marshall drops somebody, right? Maybe Marshall drops somebody and them and West Virginia doing home and home. Who knows? Let's see who Marshall has on their schedule for 26. They have Penn State, Middle Tennessee, Missouri State, and Eastern Michigan. Probably not dropping any of those unless they don't want to go to Penn State. But then, again, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this pans out. But considering Coach Gibson only put 2027 on the tweet, I wouldn't think 2026 would even be on the radar at this point. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. Does West Virginia indeed lose the game against Alabama? I personally was looking forward to that series. I think it's an opportunity for West Virginia to prove themselves against a blue blood program. Most fans expect they would lose that game. But heck, let's remember the last time West Virginia played Alabama in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. I think it was Chick-fil-A back down in Atlanta several years ago with Dana Holgerson. Heck, I think it was a decade ago at this point. That was an exciting game. West Virginia held their own. They competed in that game. I don't see no reason they couldn't do it again against Alabama. Also, I have some friends who are Alabama fans that I was looking forward to hopefully getting to tailgate with. So I had a little bit of selfish reasons for it, but I wouldn't. I don't want to see the Bama game taken off the schedule, but it may happen here now that this is happening. Now that the SEC is moving to 9 games, I just do not see them dropping Florida State and Ohio State off the schedule. Uh, so we'll see. Now they might decide they want to go. Maybe they decide, hey, we'd rather play West Virginia than Ohio State and Florida State. But again, I don't think the networks would be too fond of that move because they would want to have those games on the schedule, I would imagine. I wanted to get on here and jump on here and do this show real quick while I had a minute. This news just came down a few minutes ago. Let's go ahead and jump into the chat here and see who we got. Love Sports is on here. WVU Fan 13's in the house, who's a VIP member here on the channel, says we can't replace an Alabama with Marshall or non P4. Like I just mentioned, great point. You were ahead of me on that one. You're right. It would be tough to do. That would be, you'd be, and that'd be a high profile game you're taking off your schedule to replace with a lower profile game. And again, where would the game be played at? West Virginia was expected to travel to Alabama in 2027. So do you want to maybe you get another home game? It would be cool for if West Virginia could get another home game on the schedule with somebody. But again, who's it going to be? Because you kind of want that extra P4. Now, you could go the route of Indiana and not worry about having a P4 on the schedule. Indiana's not scheduling any out of conference P4 games for the future. Maybe you go that route. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and if Bama does indeed drop West Virginia off their schedule for 26 and 27. We've got Raven in the house. We have David Freeline. Uh, thanks, David. I appreciate you, man. We are getting closer to kickoff, Raven, and I'm so excited. I can't wait. We've got It's Coop in the house. We've got Jacob Yoho, Curtis D316, who's always here. He says, no chance it happens. Who are we going to play? WVU is not going to give up a home game, and Pitt is not coming to Morgantown 2 years in a row. Yeah, it won't be Pitt, I don't think, because of that reason. Were it not for that, I would say Pitt would be it. But again, unless you schedule it on a neutral site, it doesn't make sense, kind of like Marshall, right? You'd have to schedule it at a neutral site. And where are you going to schedule West Virginia and Marshall at a neutral site that's going to bring fans? I'm not sure. How many West Virginia fans would be willing to travel out of state to watch that game? And is there any stadium inside the state outside of Huntington or Morgantown that would be able to hold the fans for that game? I don't know. Be interesting to see. It could have just been a troll job by Tony Gibson. Who knows? Got Timothy Gunner in the house, Carla Jenkins, John Kelly, WVU Fan 13 still here. H. Bar Farkle, who's another VIP member. Thank you for your membership and support. Better to play Virginia Tech and Tennessee again. I agree, WVU Fan 13, but I didn't take the time because I jumped on here and did this so quickly. I didn't take the time to review Virginia Tech's schedule. Let's see what their schedule looks like, matter of fact. Virginia Tech future football schedule. Let's go ahead and pull it up right now. And the ACC, see, that's another thing. The ACC is likely going to be doing something similar. I read earlier today. If the SEC decided to go to 9 conference games, they likely would too. That way, all 4 power conference teams are playing a 9-game conference schedule, so they might have to drop some games. Right now, Virginia Tech, yeah, they're pretty full. I mean, they have at least 3 games on their schedule every year in 26 and 27. They have 4 games on their schedule for 26 and 3 for 27, including a game at Notre Dame, which they're not, you're not giving that up. So I don't really see Virginia Tech being an option here for either of those years either. Maybe Tennessee. I don't know. Let me look at Tennessee. Tennessee future football schedules. Tennessee does not have an opening in 26 or 27 right now. Well, No, they have Georgia. They have Georgia Tech on the schedule both of those years in their non-conference. So doesn't look like they have an opening either. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Uh, this might be for naught. Maybe Alabama doesn't drop West Virginia. Maybe they drop Ohio State or Florida State. Decide to play West Virginia. I doubt that happens, but we never know. It's very possible. Stephen Vitt's in the house. He says, just stopping by. Sounds like this is one of many seeds planted for an eventual breakaway. It very well could be, Stephen. I don't know. We've heard talk that the Big Ten and SEC are looking to do a scheduling agreement amongst themselves. This could be opening the door for that because the Big Ten didn't want to do that unless the SEC went to 9 conference games. They also wouldn't agree to a 5+11 playoff format if the big SEC didn't go to 9 conference games, and maybe that opens the door for that as well. So we'll see. What about Penn State? Good question, H. Bar Farkle. Let's look at it. Penn State football schedule. Future schedules. It's credit courtesy of FBS or FBschedules.com, by the way. 26, no opening. Well, 26, they play Marshall, ironically, and also Temple and Buffalo. So no P4 opponents on the schedule for Penn State in 26, but apparently they don't want one. And in 27, they have Syracuse. So doesn't look like Penn State has an opening either. It's going to be tough to find a game to replace. If Alabama drops them, it's going to be tough. That's why Marshall makes sense in 27. It might be their only option. If Marshall has an opening, you have an opening. It kind of makes it easy as long as they can agree on where to play the game. That's what would be tricky. West Virginia might have to pay Marshall to come to Morgantown, right? But if West Virginia gets the gate, then it might be worth it. And even though Marshall administration wouldn't agree to it before, now that you have Tony Gibson and Rich Rodriguez as the coaches, and everybody's starving for revenue right now, if both teams have a chance to earn revenue with that game, maybe you do it. It would be interesting to see. Bob Swanger's in the house. He says he would love to have WVU back on the schedule. Bob, yeah, man, it would be awesome. But again, just don't see it happening. I don't think Penn State has an opening. WVU Fan 13 says Alabama and Penn State are automatic losses right now. That's the reason why we wanted to get Alabama off the schedule originally. Yes, but I don't know that that'll be the case now that we have a new coaching staff. I'm more confident. Again, we haven't even seen them coach a game yet. I understand that. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. But we haven't even seen, I think Rich Rod and his staff and the team he's put together would have a better chance of competing and winning than Neil Brown's teams. I just think he's a much better football coach. Curtis D says you play P4 schools for that TV money. Kevin Suggs says SEC playing 9 conference games. Big Ten has no excuse now for going against the 5-11 playoff format. And, I can't help but wonder, speaking of that, we saw earlier this week that 2018 format got leaked. Do you think the Big Ten might have had that leaked in order to try to push or force the SEC's hand here? And because if the SEC didn't want that, they might be like, wait a minute now. We don't want to do this. We'd rather go ahead and do the 16-team model, do a 5+11. We'd rather just add a conference game, and that's what they're doing. And apparently the networks, one of the things the SEC too was waiting on was, hey, we want ESPN, who's their primary rights holder, we want ESPN to pay us more money if we're going to play an extra conference game. It looks like, apparently, if they've agreed to it, that's happened. But we'll see. WVU Fan 13 says Virginia Tech is dropping the Old Dominion future matchups. Virginia Tech would be a better matchup. Okay. Maybe so. That would be awesome. That's going to draw money. Carla, you make a great point. Carla Jenkins says WVU should keep Alabama. Name any other Big 12 team that has Bama on its schedule. Right now, none. I agree. WVU Fan 13, that's a great point. Let's look at the Old Dominion games on Tech's schedule and see where they fall. And then see if there actually is an opening. I didn't think to look about it. I remember now reading that story recently, and I had forgotten about it. All right. So 2026, if they drop Old Dominion, they would still have a P4 opponent. But to see if the ACC, that might be why the ACC's dropping. See if Tech drops Old Dominion, that puts them down to 3 non-conference games, including one against Maryland, which is a P4 opponent. But if they end up going to non-conference games too, then they won't have room to add anybody else, and that's likely going to happen. And in 2027, they only have the 3 scheduled, including one against Maryland and then one against Notre Dame. So I'm not sure. Then they don't have Old Dominion on schedule again until 2030. So I'm not sure Virginia Tech works either. But I would love it. I would definitely love to see them play Virginia Tech again. Friends call me Sean says UVA doesn't play a P4 in 27 and 28. Well, maybe there's a way they can get a third neutral site game with UVA on the schedule for 27 if Bama drops them. That's another option, Sean. Friends call me Sean. Great point. But again, if you're going to do it in a neutral site, you've got to have the site available to you. The other 2 games on the schedule with UVA are in Charlotte. Could you get Charlotte again? I don't see either team agreeing to make a one-off trip to the other one's stadium. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. We could see some shakeups in the West Virginia schedule coming in the next few days or weeks, future schedules, that is. Or, like I said earlier, this could all be for naught, and it may not even come to fruition. The game may even stay on the schedule. We'll see. The game, I do agree that the Bama game doesn't have as much. I'm not as excited about it now that Nick Saban's not at Alabama. But that Alabama name still carries a lot of cachet, and it will still be really cool if West Virginia could compete or even beat Alabama on a national stage, because the game's going to be on national television, likely on ESPN, since ESPN is the primary right or the sole rights holder for SEC and the primary holder for Big 12. You imagine the game would be on ESPN. So, yeah, maybe UVA and West Virginia play in Charlotte in 2027. It's a great point. But, again, you've got to have the facility available to you. What's Charlotte got planned for that date in 2027? So, definitely keep your head on a swivel, keep your eyes open to see how this all plays out. But this is going to be a short show. I just want to get on here and break this news to you guys. Make sure you saw it. Again, credit to Ross Dellinger for breaking the news. And, uh, you know, the cool thing about Ross, or let me back up a second. The cool thing about Tony Gibson making that troll or potential troll or that tweet is, he's going to know what's happening. I'm sure Ren Baker, all these guys probably know that the SEC was close to doing this. Ren Baker's very well connected. He's friends with Joe Castiglione, the AD at Oklahoma. I'm sure he's been kept in the loop on what's going on the national level and with the SEC. And if he saw this coming, they've probably already been making plans behind the scenes for their contingency plan or their backup plan, whether it be Marshall or whether it be somebody else, you know. Personally, as a fan, I would like to see West Virginia and Marshall play each other. I think it would be cool. I think it's good for the state. I understand the reason West Virginia doesn't play Marshall. It's basically financially driven. But as a fan, it would be fun. So I would like to see it happen, but I don't really want to see it happen at the expense of the Alabama series. But I would like to see them somehow get each other on the schedule at some point in the future. I think it'd be fun to see it again, because the game's going to sell out. Both fan bases would be excited. Why not? Anyway, thanks for tuning into the show. I'm going to jump off of here. Thank you all for joining us. If you're watching on Facebook or X, please come over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the videos over there, check out my past shows, and make sure you turn your notifications on for future shows as well. Want to give a shout out to the 365 Sports newsletter. It just broke today. I'm proud to be a part of that team. There's an article there from myself and Jonathan Martin. I'll leave a link in the description of this video once it's uploaded, of the 365 Sports newsletter, where you can get all your Big 12 news in one place. Thanks for tuning into the show. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf, and Q Country Roads.